Welcome to Who Wrote That Up for You, a daily podcast that shines a light on the American justice system and its role in empowering the powerful to take from you. The justice system is the only branch of your government where an individual, rather than the collective, can make the system act for you. It puts power in the individual's hands, but it's broken and being used against you at a time when you need it most.
And welcome to Who Wrote That Up for You. I'm Sonia Ebron, co-founder at Courtroom 5.
And I'm Deborah Sloan, the other co-founder at Courtroom 5.
We've got a wonderful, exciting lineup of guests for you today. In a few moments, we will speak with Jazz Hampton. Jazz is the CEO at TurnSignl, one of the most progressive traffic stop apps in the country here. And so we'll talk with him about some of the progress that they have made. A little further in the show, we will speak with Katherine Alteneder at the Self-Represented Litigation Network. I've been very happy to work with Katherine on that network for some time. So we'll hear about some of the efforts and progress that they are working on there as well. Before we get started, though, Deborah, what's on your mind today?
I want to talk about this case down in South Carolina of a set of identical twins who were accused of cheating on a medical exam. And the if you're going to court on a defamation case or uh, by saying somebody defamed you, there's a certain number of things that you have to prove. And so these two identical twins, they were supposedly caught with the identical answers on some of the questions, on many of the questions, identical incorrect answers and identical correct answers on many of the questions. The people that were watching them decided that they were cheating, and so they basically, it got to the local media, and there was just this big thing that these two girls were cheating, and the university basically kicked them out, and they got some really bad reputation. And it turns out that a jury awarded them $1.5 million because basically the medical school could not prove that. I mean, basically, they proved that the medical school did not have basically all the elements of defamation. And again, you have to have, if you're going to court, you have to have all the elements of the what you're gonna of your claim, what you're gonna accuse someone of. And the element they didn't have was that they couldn't prove that they were cheating, just based on just that. And there's one part that says it has to be a lie. And basically, the girls are saying, well, it's a lie. We didn't do it. And so they won. And I like that because it was a textbook. They don't have the elements. So basically, the girls won. But it was a very interesting case, but it kind of highlights what a jury has to look at in order to prove a particular case.
Elements are everything. That's true. Elements and evidence, anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, elements are very important. We'll appreciate you bringing that up. As you all know, at Courtroom 5, we believe the courts belong to the people, in particular to the people who use them. And we, the people, are coming to claim our courts. And so if you are in court without a lawyer, or you need to sue someone and can't find a lawyer to represent you, get yourself over to courtroom5.com. Try a limited version of our services for free, and we hope to provide some relief for you there. At this time, it's my pleasure to welcome onto the show Jazz Hampton, the CEO, very famous now, CEO at TurnSignl. Jazz, I see you in the press getting this award and that award. I think you were in Dubai or somebody on your team the other day. I mean, it's just shaking up the world
uh,
with TurnSignl. So welcome. Thank you for taking time to join us here on Who
well,
Wrote That Up for You.
not only am I a fan of this program, but a fan of Courtroom Five. So thank you all for having me. And I think I was on a list or two, but you were on each one of those. I think so. It's I'm happy to be in good company. Happy to be in good company.
Fantastic, fantastic. So tell us about TurnSignl and what got you involved in it.
Yeah, so TurnSignal is a app that anyone could have on their phone, and with the press of a button when you're driving, you can be connected 24/7, 365 to an attorney on a video conference, just like we're having, instantaneously when you're pulled over or when you're in an accident. Our mission and goal is simple and it's three-pronged: it's to protect drivers' rights, to de-escalate these roadside interactions, and third, and most importantly, to ensure that everyone gets home safely. I have co-founders just like you all. My two co-founders are also two Black men, Andre and Mike. And we are all born and raised here in the state of Minnesota. So we know tragedy all too well from traffic stops. In fact, Andre and Michael, who've been best friends since before they could walk, since they were 3 years old, they grew up, in St. Paul. They knew the Castile family when Philando tragically lost his life. That hit home in a real way. And then, in 2020, George Floyd happened. And I was, my background is I have a computer science degree, and then I went straight into law school. When I was in law school, I was a public defender. After that, I went and worked at a national corporate, law firm defending large companies when they were being sued. And after George Floyd, I was on so many panels, so many DEI conferences, so many panels about what we should do in justice. And to be honest with you, what I started feeling personally was I'm not doing anything, especially as a Black male that's a lawyer in this state. I'm not doing anything to really be a part of the solution on the ground level. And at that time, Mike and Dre called me and they said, "Jazz, we should leave. We're thinking about doing this. What do you think about having a lawyer on the phone?" And I was also teaching a class at one of our local law schools at the time, and I jumped into professor mode and I rattled off all the legal considerations that need to be thought of: attorney-client privilege, to your right to record during these interactions, and your First Amendment rights. And at the end of that long speech, they're like, "Jazz, you have to quit your job and join us to do it." And so, with the permission of my wife, I did just that, and she said I could do it. So I stepped down from my role as a professor and from my litigation role at my law firm about a year and a half shy of making partner to start TurnSignl with Dre and Mike.
Extraordinary. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it is the lived experience, I think, that makes some of these justice tech applications so powerful. The empathy that we have with the folks we're trying to serve. So I really appreciate you stepping down from your job. Thanks to your wife for allowing you to do it, to get to work on this. That's
she
fantastic.
she actually said, she's like, "You're on my insurance anyways. Go ahead." So so
That's
more
what's
credit
up.
more
That's what's
credit to my
up.
wife. Yeah.
Tell us about some of the recent, plaudits that you all have received. You're in several states now. You're moving very fast, and I know, like I said, I've seen you in the press a lot and getting lots of awards. What's happening there at TurnSignl?
Yeah, we appreciate awards, and of course it does feel on a certain level of validation of what we're doing. But what we appreciate more than that is the feedback we get from people who are being pulled over, pressing that button, and have an attorney on the line. That's what gives us the most joy. I can't tell you how many emails, surveys that we get back saying, "Hey, we had a woman in Brooklyn Center, the city where Dante Wright was one of the more tragic losses we had recently right here in Minnesota." A woman who was pulled over, and she said, the attorney was there and they helped guide me. But more than anything, I'm a Black woman on my way to pick up my kids from school at 3:30 in the afternoon. And I just wanted someone there with me in my vehicle. And not only someone, but someone who has knowledge of the law. Like, that story of her telling us that meant more to me than winning the ABA Tech Show Startup of the Year, right? Don't get me wrong. I loved that award and we appreciated winning that. But that story is so much more. And we hear those day in and day out, and that's what means a lot to me. And when we started TurnSignl, we launched only in Minnesota, because when someone answers these calls, it's someone who practices law in the state that you're driving. right? It's not someone in Dubai that practices law in Florida answering a Minnesota call. It's someone who practices law in that state. And so we roll out on a state by state basis. And today we're in 20 states. We just launched in New York and New Jersey this week. And by the April 1st, we'll be in all 50 states in America.
Wow.
So
Awesome.
we are thrilled about that progress, and it's been so much fun to see more and more people have access to the platform.
That is extraordinary. We're also, I mentioned the Justice Tech. We're really excited to have you represented by Damian Wilson, your marketing head in the Justice Tech Association too. You all are just an example of the speed at which we want to develop and distribute these solutions. So just big ups on that. Really, really proud and happy about your progress there.
And when it comes to organizations like Justice Tech, I didn't know about them honestly before I left my job and entered this space. And there, people don't know there's a robust system that is here to support legal tech companies. And there's so many good legal tech opportunities that are still there. And so many companies like Courtroom 5 doing great work in this space already. It feels great to be in a room with more people doing just that work, and a lot of them doing it for reasons of access to justice, which is incredibly important as well. So I love it.
That's fantastic. So, last question then. What's your vision? What's the end goal for TurnSignl? What do how do you see it changing the world? What's going to be different when this is in everyone's hands?
Yeah, I've been pulled over 12 times in my life, and
Mm.
I've never received a ticket. A handful of those times have been since I've become a lawyer. And what I always say is, I have a privilege that I know the law. I know how to communicate the law in a calm and de-escalated manner. And I know how to navigate those situations better than someone who doesn't have my educational background. What I love and what I see for TurnSignl is the ubiquity of giving everyone the same feeling that I have in that moment, right? When that attorney's on the phone with you, you know that someone is there that's going to help guide you through that moment in the same way that you can communicate that as the way that I can as a lawyer, as a law professor, or anything else. That's the goal, is ubiquity. I want everyone who's driving to have this in the same way. Today's my 5-year anniversary with my wife and I, and we're going to go out to dinner and we're going to Uber home. And just like I think of, I'm going to go to this restaurant and Uber home, I want people to think, oh, when I was pulled over, I used TurnSignl. I want it to click in your mind just like Uber does or Lyft does when you think about getting home, right? I want that to be the case for everyone who's out there driving. And that's also why we make TurnSignl available to everyone at no cost to them if they can't afford it. If you make under $40,000, you never have to pay for TurnSignl. In fact, you get the same product that Elon Musk or Bill Gates or the president of the United States gets. You get the exact same product, and we do not charge you for it because we don't believe in that. We want everyone to have that safety, and that's why it's really important as we're rolling to all these 50 states.
Excellent. Ubiquity. That's what it's all about. That's
Exactly.
fantastic. And so, Jazz, I'm going to share TurnSignal's website on the screen for our viewers here, turnsignal.com, without the A. I think that's
Yeah, that's
brilliant.
right.
Appreciate that. Where else can people find you online?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. So I'm just Jazz Hampton, JAZZ Hampton. You find me on LinkedIn. That's one of my more active social medias. And then TurnSignal on all platforms, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond, so, and Twitter. So find us there. And then for myself personally, I'm Jazz Hampton ESQ on all other platforms. So please find me. I love engaging with folks. I love talking legal tech. And you're right, we don't have the A in TurnSignl because there's a lack of access to justice. So
There
until
you
we have
go.
access to justice, we won't have the A in our name. So
I
I
love
appreciate
it.
that.
There you go. There you go. All
Yeah.
right, Jazz Hampton, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have you back.
Thank you all for having me. Good to talk.
Excuse me, Deborah. What do we have?
All right. So yesterday's or the previous day's quiz was true or false. The trial stage is the longest part of litigation, and the attorney who was on at the time, he thought that was a great question, so he answered it in text. It's false. That is false. Typically, the longest part of litigation is the discovery stage, which could go on for years. A trial typically, what, 2, 3 weeks, maybe a month at most, if it's a civil trial. But the discovery stage can go for a long time. Okay, so today's quiz then. Tori, was sued by Big Bad Bank for failing to pay a credit card debt. Tori responded to the complaint with a motion to dismiss. She won. The case was dismissed without prejudice. Should Tori assume the case is over? All right, so get ready to answer that question. Can can hear you.
At this time, it is my great pleasure to welcome onto the show Katherine Alteneder at the Self-Represented Litigation Network. Thank you so much for joining us, Katherine, and thank you for the work you do at the Self-Represented Litigation Network. I've been happy to partner in some small respect with you in some of that work over the last few years. Katherine, before we get into the meat of it, give us your background and just how you got involved in the Self-Represented Litigation Network.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, thank you so much for having me on, and congratulations for the amazing progress that you have made and the contribution your company makes, but also the leadership that you give our community being the Access to Justice folks. It's a really exciting time to be alive in Access to Justice, and you all are really standing at the top of the class, showing us the way. So thank you very much. Yeah, so I spent about 20 years in Alaska. I was a legal aid lawyer, and then in 2001, I was hired by the Alaska court system to start a self-help center. And their plan was to have kiosks in the lobby. And I said, no. Alaska, if it had time zones, would have 4. It is very big. And like many states that have large rural areas, resources tend to go towards the urban area, and the rural areas are excluded. In Alaska, this is particularly a critical issue because much of the urban issue are indigenous communities who've lived there for tens of thousands of years, and we should be serving them first, right? So what we did back in 2001 went all phone and internet. So I've been remote for 2 decades. So I can't believe it took a pandemic to get everybody else on board, but I guess that was that. And we went all phone and internet and provided comprehensive self-help services that included forms and instructions, but also coaching for trial preparation. We focused on contested cases. And we also then, using the phone and the internet and then connecting with local community partners that could be on the ground to help people. We spent about a year talking to people on the phone, figuring out what they needed, what they wanted, and the kinds of language and terms and all of that. Real focus on plain language, wrote hundreds of court forms, and it was a blast. However, I was myself and one of the law librarians at the time, Jessica Van Buren, were the only 2 people in those first couple of years that were working on these issues in Alaska. And I became part of a small group of professionals around the rest of the country, in California, Maryland, Minnesota, New York being some of the key places that were also starting self-help centers in courts at that time. And that there was something called the Self-Represented Litigation Network that was a project within the Conference of Chief Justices. And Richard Zorza, John Grecian, Bonnie Huff, Glenn Rodden from LSC, Lori Zielon, who's a retired justice of the California Supreme Court or Appellate Court, were some of the original leaders and really visionaries that we bring Access to Justice folks together and think about how to change how courts provide services. In the 1970s, there was an article that was the first one documenting about 2.5% or something of the people were self-represented. Now, in state courts, depending on case type and location, it's between 65 and 100% of folks are self-represented. So we had this expert user system that lay people were in. So what do we do? In 2014, the Public Welfare Foundation came in and gave us some funding, so we were able to spin out of the National Center and open it up beyond just this sort of early group that was associated with the National Center and open it up to the community, because by 2014 we had enough momentum around the country. Self-help was happening in lots of places. The courts understood they needed to change how they were doing business. And so now we are a network of justice system professionals with about 2,000 members all over the country. We track about 30 different constituencies. We try to bring in people from the courts, legal aid, the bar, technologists like yourself. And as you know, Sonia, you're a superstar of co-chairing one of our working groups, the Justice Tech Entrepreneurs Working Group. We also have working groups for law librarians, on research, forms and technology, navigators, really whatever sort of the moving things going on. And we learn about best practices, what's happening around the country, and then that helps us sort of identify where, to put it in the Wayne Gretzky speak, right, where the open ice is, like where opportunities are, and that we can get there and support people as they come into the field, but also as they grow. So it's a lot of fun. I meet inspiring people every single day, but often it is only, one or two people in a jurisdiction that's working on something. So having a national network is critical so people get professional support and collaboration.
I have to say, I have learned so much from working with the organization and just understanding as a non-lawyer, just the breadth of work that's going on access to justice and making sure or trying to ensure that self-represented litigants get some services and have some empathy from more experienced people in the system. So really, thank you for this work and for this network. It's been extraordinary just learning about all that is going on there. I have seen it as I'm on the listserv, and so I see all of the information being passed and folks just asking for questions and getting huge responses and things just moving along as a result of having access to this network. Is that the purpose of it, or are there, some other goals for SRLN?
Yeah, primarily it really has evolved into a community of practice for justice system professionals to connect, to learn, to share. That is its primary goal. But then beyond that, for policymakers, it really does give them a chance to see where movement is happening. We're in the process of trying to build a reform movement. And so you've got to figure out, where your opportunities lie. And so we do also, we're able to use the information we learn from our members and participants to do an analysis and gain insights about the maturity of the field, where opportunities are. We have a lot of funders that participate. We also do, our organization itself does a lot of geospatial analysis. All justice is local. So, we have a mapping division that does maps for private clients throughout the sector. But we also use that to do our own internal analytics of where are the opportunities. And then, my job is just to meet people like you all and put you with other folks and just make connections where there's a spark and let people run. And I also think the development of leadership, we have a big generational changeover, the folks coming into the sector. I mean, we want to give them opportunity. We want to support them. And really empower them to be leaders, right? Because that's what this reform movement needs, and every individual is a leader in their community on this.
Extraordinary. That's fantastic. So let me ask then, I want to ask rather how courts can build trust and confidence with the public. I want to ask that, but I think it's important to preface it by asking why. Let's do the why first, right? Why is it important that the public have trust and confidence in the courts?
Yeah, well, so just any of our government institutions, and in fact, right now we can refer to the National Center for State Courts does an annual public opinion survey, and they look at the public's view of government institutions generally, and of course, we know across the country that is eroding. In the 2022 survey, the percentage of people saying that they had either a great deal of confidence or some confidence in a government institution is as follows. For state legislatures, 55% of the people. Governor, 54%. Federal courts, 57%. U.S. Supreme Court, 53%. And this survey was in October of 2022, so it's very current. State courts win actually at 60%. But this erosion in trust and confidence of our government institutions and the crisis of the rule of law, and everything that we see going on in our societies, if these institutions are not valid to the people in our communities, then we just can't do those kind of social compacts to have communities that work, that are inclusive. So I actually see that this work is critical for the rule of law, to stop the slide towards fascism. I think self-help is a bulwark of democracy, hands down, because it is one of the most critical aspects of your government, responding to you in a respectful, inclusive, empathetic way when done well.
I
So,
am so
yeah,
stealing
That's
that. I am
great.
so stealing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's the quote of
yeah,
the decade there. Well, then let's move to the how. How can
yeah.
courts work to build that trust and confidence? What do they need to do?
Well, my short answer is we need to develop accountability practices. Now, what is really interesting about this, one other thing from the survey, and this is really the time to do it. For the first time since 2012, we actually saw a crossover where the majority of respondents were saying that courts do not deliver justice for all. And then when we look further into those numbers, we see that 61% of Black respondents do not believe justice for all is being delivered, 59% of Hispanic respondents, and 46% of white respondents. So we see mirrored in these numbers the crises that we are facing across this country. In this survey, the state courts identify accountability. They have a question that says, ask people about accountability practices, and they think that those are as follows: an appeals process, and the public generally feels these are very good. So 84% of the public thinks the appeals process is good. 84% think trial by jury of your peers. 81% code of conduct and discipline. 81% writing down opinions. 81% open court or online records. So this is what the court has set out as an accountability practice. However, in the self-represented court, exactly 0 of those things are happening.
Yeah.
And so what the institution has believed is an accountability practice is not. They're not asking questions like, is the court adequately funded to provide high quality customer service? Right. Is it easy to use, safe and secure technology supporting the public in a way that meets the public's needs and helps them achieve their goals in court? Who is being excluded from services and why? Is the law even being followed? We are increasingly seeing research where many judges are just absolutely not following the law. Courtroom procedures and practices support lay people in giving relevant testimony and entering relevant evidence so the judge can make a decision on the merits. I mean, that's your meat and potatoes right there, right?
Right. Yeah. Not happening. Yep.
And so, and is there a community feedback loop? So I think the things that actually would make this institution accountable to our communities are just not even on their radar. And so, we can ask, like, well, what can we do to change that? Personally, I believe we need to, we have to do it in a structural way to start with, in order to have sustainability, and really beginning to think about, can we create community councils similar to maybe a hospital or a school district, where you have civic-minded individuals of the community who sit and regularly talk about what's going on in a court, who can go, are you doing the research court on all the things I just said? What is the way that we're documenting whether the law is being followed? Now with technology and natural language processing, guess what? We can actually learn this stuff in a scalable and affordable way. But unless we bring our communities, and because court, all justice is local. I mean, it has to be for that community and inclusive of everybody in that community who can say, this is what we expect from our court, and the court should be delivering it. So that's my hope.
This is a sermon. I love it. I love it. That's fantastic, Katherine. Thank you for that. Well, there's another part of this. Then I guess I would ask, how can courts work with justice tech entrepreneurs and justice tech applications to build that trust and confidence?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So much of what I talked about, I think, if you were talking to a a lawyer or a judge from 50 years ago, they'd say, well, that's just all impossible to track. And that's why we have these sort of rigid measures of appeal or a record or whatever. Technology empowers us to go right in and see everything. And so the first thing I think for justice tech entrepreneurs is they are the leading educators in their community for the courts. The courts just don't have the sophistication over what is even possible. Like the idea that you could use, natural language processing to look at, are we even following the law? Like, what's going on? How are the judges treating people? Or, we can actually, use computers to scan that. How we provide services. You all have an ethos of how you do UX and UI and the constant feedback stuff, which courts, it's a very historically rigid, just put it out there. So you're educators of not only the tools that are out there, but a methodology of how to engage the tools. Secondly, you're the vendors, right? I mean, you're the people who can build the tools for them and test. They don't have, amongst their legacy vendors, aren't being all scrappy and getting in there and figuring out what the people need. They're serving the institution, not the public. Justice tech entrepreneurs are serving the public, not the institution. And that's where we see that power shift happen. But we have to build those relationships and those connections to the broader community, which I think also justice tech, because as so many of the people that are on your podcasts and certainly the individual Jazz who just went, we're really talking about people from a lived experience, right? So that is who dominates the justice tech. So when we build connections with them, we're getting organizers, we're getting wellness folks, we're getting financial folks, educational folks, and we can really teach the court in an ethically appropriate way about its community and how it can be responsive to their community. And you guys are the key to that.
We absolutely are here to serve.
No small order there.
It is no small order. No joke. That's some work there. That is extraordinary. Katherine, I'm going to share the organization's website, SRLN.org for Self-Represented Litigation Network on the screen there. Where else can people find you and the organization online?
LinkedIn and Twitter are the two places that we remain on Twitter. Absolutely LinkedIn. I'm on there as an individual and as is Self-Represented Litigation Network. So, and for any justice system professional, there's a process to join, to sign up, and you can get on the listserv and then hear from colleagues, not just in this country. We have about 14 other countries participating. So you get really, what the current real-time best thinking is on access to justice reform.
I love it. I love it. And just we have a lot of self-represented litigants tuning in. So we just want to clarify that the organization is for professionals working in the justice system, not for self-represented litigants themselves.
Correct. It is for justice system professionals. We're trying to support and hold them up to do a better job in their communities. But what I think self-represented litigants and the members of a community can do is ask your court who's participating in SRLN. Ask your judges. If there's a judicial election and there's a judicial warrant, hey, do you participate in SRLN? We have judges in here learning from other judges. Challenge your court, your judiciary, the staff to participate in these best practices organizations and get exposed to the innovations in the field.
Fantastic. That is the best way to contribute. That's absolutely right. Katherine, thank you so much for the work you've done throughout your career, but especially with SRLN. It's been a pleasure to work with you and look to continue partnership. Thank you so much for joining us on Who Wrote That Up For You.
Thank you. You guys take care. Bye-bye.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Again, I'm just, every day, just really proud and happy to be able to work in this space with folks who are doing such powerful work and just having empathy, not only for the people affected, but for our system as a whole. I mean, the courts, the institution ought to work better. And so it's just great to know that there are people in entrepreneurship, in organizations like SRLN dedicated to making the whole institution work better.
I love this justice tech focus today. It's really
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's what we do. Absolutely.
All right.
That's all we have for you today. And we will talk with you again soon. Thanks for joining us on Who Wrote That Up For You.
Are you feeling beleaguered, angry, or afraid, as if things are spinning out of control and you're powerless to stop them? It's easy to just let things slide and hope they don't get worse. But they often do get worse. The thing is, you're not powerless. Our courts belong to us, and their purpose is to give power to the powerless. Don't let your grievances pile up without redressing them. You can handle this in court. Or, if someone takes you to court, you can take them to school.